Some mysteries don't simply fade away, they deepen, growing louder in their silence. Columbus, Ohio, in the early hours of April 1st, 2006. The city is quiet but alive with the usual buzz of college students preparing for a spring break. Among them is Brian Randall Shaffer, a 27-year-old medical student at Ohio State University. Known for his intelligence, his kindness, and a dream of one day starting a band, Ryan had just spent an evening out with his friends. Security cameras capture his final moments, a brief glimpse of Brian standing outside a bar talking with two women. Then he disappeared, just like that, without a trace. Brian's friends and family were baffled. He vanished from a public place with no signs of struggle, no indication of where he went next. The bar he was last seen leaving had no accessible back exits. His car was found untouched at his apartment, and his phone went unanswered. His girlfriend was waiting for him, her plans for a trip to Miami shattered by his sudden absence. His father, Randy, who had just lost his wife months earlier, began a painful search that would consume his life. Brian Shaffer's disappearance remains one of the most perplexing cases in Ohio history, a haunting story of a young man who vanished without explanation, leaving behind unanswered questions and a family desperate for closure. Before we dive deep into this haunting case, please take a moment to support this channel. Welcome to Echoes of the Unknown, where we seek answers in the shadows and meaning in the mysteries. Here we explore the eerie, the unexplained, and the downright bizarre. Stories that challenge our sense of reality and refuse to be forgotten. If you're drawn to stories that don't add up, tales that twist and turn throughout history and human nature, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button. Tap the bell so you never miss an episode. Give this video a like. It helps us bring more investigations like this, curious minds like yours. Before his sudden and baffling disappearance, Brian Shaffer was a 27-year-old second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Born on February 25, 1979 in Pickerton, Ohio, Brian was known for his easygoing charm, his bright smile, and adventurous spirit. Friends described him as someone who could walk into a room and make it feel warmer. He loved music, especially Jimmy Buffett, and often daydreamed about leaving behind the grind of medicine to live a more relaxed life near a beach. His relationship with his family was close, though they had faced heartbreak. His mother, Renee, had passed away from a rare form of bone cancer just weeks before his disappearance. Those who knew Brian said he was dealing with the grief, but also seemed determined to keep moving forward, with plans for his future, both in medicine and with his girlfriend Alex. Brian's last known night began on March 31st, 2006, Friday marking the start of spring break at Ohio State University. For most students, it was a night to let go of stress and welcome a week of freedom. For Brian, it would be the last night anyone could say with certainty they saw him alive. Earlier that evening, Brian had dinner with his father, Randy, at a steakhouse. Randy would later recall, Brian seemed tired, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from long hours of medical school, late-night study sessions, and the weight of looming exams. Still, there was no sign of anything unusual. Randy didn't discourage his son when Brian mentioned going out later. It was, after all, spring break. At 9 p.m., Brian met up with his close friend, William Clint Florence, at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a popular bar perched on the second floor of the South Campus Gateway complex along High Street in Columbus. The plan was simple. A night of bar hopping, a few drinks, and blowing off much-needed steam. They started at the Ugly Tuna. As the night progressed, the pair made their way to several other bars, grabbing shots of hard liquor at each stop. Along the way, they met Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint's in the Short North Art District. Meredith offered them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna for one last round before closing time. Security cameras inside the gateway captured their arrival at approximately 1:15 a.m., the trio riding the escalator up towards the bar. Footage shows them chatting and laughing, moving through the crowd as music and neon lights pulse in the background. Nothing in Brian's demeanour suggested trouble. Around 1:55 a.m., the camera picked him up again, this time alone, just outside the bar's entrance. He spoke briefly with two young women before saying goodbye and stepping out of frame. That moment remains the last confirmed visual evidence of Brian Shaffer. When the bar had closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith joined the stream of departing patrons. They assumed Brian had gone on ahead or caught a ride elsewhere, perhaps slipping away quietly to head home. Calls to his phone went unanswered. No immediate alarm was raised. After all, in the chaos of closing time, friends often lose track of one another. The following day, Brian's girlfriend, Alexis Wagner, waited for him in Toledo. The couple had been planning to fly to Miami on April the 1st for a long-awaited spring break trip. When Brian didn't show at the airport and still wasn't answering calls, worry turned into fear. Police were contacted, and the first checks revealed troubling signs. Brian's apartment was untouched, his bed undisturbed, his clothes and belongings still inside. His car remained parked outside, unused, cold. No one, the two women he spoke to, the bar staff, or even Clint or Meredith, would recall seeing him leave the gateway area. The service door nearby was locked, and the building's exits were under camera coverage. On the footage, Brian never reappears. It was as if, in a busy entertainment district filled with people, music and light, Brian Shaffer had simply stepped out of sight and into nothing. From the moment police got involved, Brian Shaffer's disappearance became one of the most perplexing cases Columbus had ever seen. Investigators quickly obtained and reviewed the extensive security footage from the South Campus Gateway complex. Cameras showed Brian entering the Ugly Tuna Saloon at 1:15 a.m., talking to two women around 1:55 a.m., and then walking out of view towards the bar's main entrance. But what the footage did not show was even more important. There was no sign of Brian leaving. Every public exit from the Ugly Tuna was covered by cameras, yet no image of him reappearing could be found. It was as though he had simply vanished inside a building full of people. Detectives considered whether Brian might have slipped out through a back or service exit. The service door near the entrance he was last seen at was reportedly closed and for staff use only. It also led to a difficult construction-filled alleyway littered with equipment and debris at the time. Investigators examined this possibility and found no conclusive evidence he'd even gone that way. His friend, Clint Florence, told police that he and Meredith Reed had looked for Brian when the bar closed, but assumed he had left ahead of them. Clint later hired an attorney, inclined to take a polygraph test, a decision that drew public suspicion. The police never named him as a suspect. Meredith, in contrast, fully cooperated with authorities and passed her polygraph test with ease. Detectives then looked at Brian's personal life. His girlfriend, Alexis, was quickly ruled out. She was in Toledo visiting family and, according to friends, was deeply in love with Brian. She was devastated by his disappearance and repeatedly called his phone in the days that followed. Those calls sparked one of the strangest elements of this case. About 6 days after Brian went missing, Alexis dialed his number, and instead of going straight to voicemail, it rang 3 times before cutting off. Hoping this was a sign Brian was alive, investigators traced the call. The signal had briefly connected with a cell tower in Hilliard, a suburb about 14 miles away from Columbus. Unfortunately, cell service quirks means it could not be determined if the phone was actually there, or if the ringing was a fluke caused by a network glitch. Police scoured the gateway area and surrounding neighborhoods. Flyers were posted, search dogs were brought in, dumpsters were checked. Divers searched the nearby river, fearing Brian might have fallen in after leaving the bar, but nothing was found. Into the heartbreak, Randy Shaffer tirelessly searched for his son. He spoke to the media, distributed flyers, and even pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. Tragically, 2008, 2 years after Brian vanished, Randy died in a freak storm when a tree fell on him at his home. When he saw this as a cruel twist in a case already steeped in tragedy. Without physical evidence, sightings, or a clear suspect, the investigation stalled. Theories swirled. Brian left voluntarily, met with foul play, or suffered an accident in an unseen corner of the Gateway complex, but none could be proven. Today, nearly 2 decades later, Brian Shaffer remains officially missing. His name etched into online forums, true crime podcasts, and television specials as one of the most enduring unsolved cases in modern American history. A case where the last seconds on camera seem to hold an impossible mystery. When someone disappears without a trace, the mind seeks answers, building narratives to bridge the gap between fact and uncertainty. In the case of Brian Shaffer, those narratives have grown into several main theories. Some stem from official police speculation, others from amateur sleuths online, and a few from those who knew Brian personally. Each is compelling, but all are hampered by the same crippling flaw: total absence of physical evidence. First up is the voluntary disappearance. Did Brian walk away? First glance, the idea seems far-fetched. Brian was a second-year medical student with a promising career, a devoted girlfriend, and a father who adored him. Beneath that, there was turbulence. Just 3 weeks before his disappearance, Brian's mother, Renee, had died from a rare blood cancer. Friends described his grief as deep but quiet. He still laughed, still made plans, but sometimes stared off as if lost in thought. He told one friend that music was helping him cope, particularly songs about escaping to a new life. It's known that Brian sometimes daydreamed about dropping everything and traveling the world. He joked about running off to a tropical island, living cheaply and writing music. To some, that made the idea of a planned disappearance quite plausible. The problems with this theory quickly emerge. Brian left behind his car, his wallet, keys, and passport. His bank accounts were never touched. He made no effort to contact his girlfriend, Alexis, with whom he had a vacation to Miami scheduled just days later. Police also found no evidence of packed bags, staged withdrawals, or preparations of any kind. For those closest to him, the idea of Brian abandoning his family, especially his grieving father, was completely out of character. If he did leave voluntarily, it was a decision made impulsively, without any use of logical groundwork, such as the plan requires. Next up, we have foul play inside or near the ugly tuna saloona. Perhaps the most popular theory is that Brian was the victim of a targeted attack inside the bar or just outside it. The ugly tuna saloona, located on the second floor of the Gateway complex, was accessed by an escalator and monitored by security cameras. Footage shows Brian arriving with his friends, having drinks, and later briefly chatting with two women outside the entrance. After that, he steps out of frame, and he's never seen again. The cameras record his friends leaving, the crowd thinning, and eventually the bar closing, but no sign of Brian leaving at all. How could someone disappear in a space covered by security cameras? Some suggest the possibility of a blind spot in the camera coverage near the service exit. In 2006, CCTV wasn't as high definition or comprehensive as today, and there are unmonitored pockets in many venues. If Brian was attacked in or near this blind spot, the assailant could have hidden his body in the large active construction zone connected to the bar. That site was poorly lit, littered with equipment, and crucially, accessible through service corridors not open to the public. In such an environment, the body could have been temporarily concealed until removed later. The disturbing aspect of this theory is the sheer silence that followed. In a crowded bar, no one has come forward to report a single struggle or a scream, or even suspicious behavior. If foul play did occur that night inside, it was executed quickly, quietly, and with chilling precision. Closely tied to the foul play angle is the possibility that Brian's disappearance was purely accidental. The Gateway's complex was still under construction, and certain areas were hazardous. Unfinished floors contain unprotected drops, unstable flooring, and exposed wiring. One scenario imagines Brian slipping into a restricted area, perhaps looking for a shortcut, perhaps intoxicated and curious. falling into a space where his body was missed in the search. Construction was completed in the weeks and months that followed, meaning that if remains were accidentally sealed within walls or within foundations, they might never be found. Supporters of this theory point to the chaos and speed of construction work, where safety protocols are sometimes overlooked and unreported accidents can occur. Critics counter that Columbus police conducted a search with canine units and cadaver dogs, making it quite unlikely, though not impossible, Brian was in the building at that time. Another possibility is that Brian did make it out of the building, either via an unmonitored exit or during a brief camera lapse, and encountered danger outside. Late-night violence, while not rampant in Columbus, was not unheard of either. Robberies, assaults, and opportunist attacks happened, especially in areas with intoxicated bar patrons. If Brian was attacked on the street, the assailant could have transported his body quickly into a vehicle, leaving no trace at the scene. The issue with this theory lies in timing and surveillance. The surrounding area had multiple cameras, no footage had surfaced showing Brian outside. Still, even modern surveillance systems miss things. An angle blocked by a truck, a brief blind spot, or a camera malfunction could conceal critical moments. Possibly the most talked about theory is the personal motive theory. This is a theory that fuels much of the online discussion that Brian's disappearance was connected to someone in his personal life. Conflict, secret, or dangerous acquaintance unknown to the public. Supporters of this angle point to one controversial detail. Brian's friend, Clint, the last known person to see him that night, refused to take a polygraph test. While polygraphs are not foolproof and refusal is not proof of any guilt, this decision has drawn intense scrutiny. It's conceivable that Brian had a dispute or owed a debt, or that someone bore him a grudge. But without any evidence, police have never confirmed any suspect in his inner circle. Still, silence from certain individuals has kept speculation alive for nearly 2 decades. A less common but sometimes still considered possibility is that Brian was abducted by someone with a specific motive, whether personal, criminal, or psychological. Abductions of adults are rare, but when they do occur, they can be the work of individuals who plan carefully and act quickly. If this happened, the lack of any trace suggests a perpetrator who knew how to avoid detection, perhaps with access to a vehicle, a private property for concealment, and an understanding of how police search operations work. What all these theories share is the maddening absence of physical evidence. No clothing, no personal belongings, no confirmed sightings. In most missing persons cases, something surfaces somewhere. A shoe, a credit card transaction, a witness account. In Brian's case, there's absolutely nothing. This vacuum of information is what makes the theories both tantalizing and fragile. Each could fit the known facts, but none could be proven. For now, they remain frameworks, scaffolding around an empty space where the truth should be. Nearly 2 decades have passed since that spring night in 2006 when Brian Shaffer stepped into the Ugly Tuna Saloona and never came back out. On paper, the facts are straightforward. In reality, they are maddening. 27-year-old medical student, bright, funny, ambitious, spends a Friday night bar hopping with friends. He's captured on multiple security cameras. He's talking, laughing, living his life. Then, at 1:55 a.m., he walks a few steps out of frame, and it's as if the earth has swallowed him whole. From that point on, there is nothing, no video, no witnesses who definitively saw him leave, no evidence of a struggle. His phone goes silent, his bank accounts remain untouched. His apartment looks exactly as he left it, even his car, parked outside, stays unmoved. It is this clean, surgical absence that makes the case so haunting. You expect disappearances to leave traces, a dropped wallet, sighting on another street, a single unexplained phone call. In Brian's case, the trail simply stops. The Columbus Police Department, assisted by federal agencies, pulled apart every aspect of that night. They checked the bar's exits, interviewed staff, reviewed hours of footage. They explored whether Brian could have slipped through an unfinished construction site, fallen into a nearby river, or be concealed in the building itself. They found no sign of him. Theories arose, some rooted in logic, others in desperation. Did Brian decide to start over somewhere else, leaving behind his studies, his friends, and his grieving family? Did the chance encounter with the wrong person lead to his death? Was he the victim of a planned act of violence? Or could a tragic accident have been quietly covered up in the chaos of closing time? For Brian's loved ones, these theories aren't just academic debates, they're an emotional minefield. Every possibility forces them to imagine his final moments in a different way, each scenario bringing a different mix of hope and horror. His father, Randy, bore the heaviest weight. In the years following Brian's disappearance, Randy became the public face of the search. He spoke to reporters, worked with investigators, and posted appeals online, refusing to let the case fade. In 2008, tragedy struck again when Randy was killed in a freak accident, a tree falling down during a storm. Many close to the family described it as an unbearable blow, compounding the grief of losing Brian with no answers. Brian's younger brother, Derek, carried on quietly, speaking occasionally about the difficulty of living in a kind of emotional limbo, not knowing whether to mourn or to hope. For his girlfriend at the time, Alexis, the loss was equally cruel. She continued to call his phone for weeks after his disappearance, and on at least one occasion, the call appeared to ring before going to voicemail, giving her a flicker of hope that someone, somewhere, had it in their possession. That hope, like so many others in this case, eventually dissolved. What makes Brian's case so unnerving is not just that he disappeared, where and how he disappeared. This was not a remote hiking trail or a deserted country road. It was a busy urban nightlife district with multiple security cameras, witnesses, and open businesses. In the public's imagination, that should make it harder for someone to vanish, not easier. Yet somehow, the opposite here proved true. In the years since, the ugly tune has closed. The South Campus Gateway has changed, and many of the people who were there that night have moved on with their lives. The digital ghost of Brian, grainy images of him smiling at the bar, stepping outside, leaning in to speak to two women, remains frozen in time. Those few seconds of footage have been replayed millions of times online, each viewer hoping they might see something everyone else has missed. The reality is that without any new evidence, the case remains at a standstill. There have been no confirmed sightings, no credible confessions, no forensic breakthroughs. For law enforcement, the investigation is technically still open, a file that sits waiting for the right lead to come along at any time. For the public, Brian's story has become more than a missing persons case. It's a modern ghost story, a cautionary tale about how vulnerable we really are, even in the places that we feel the safest. We like to believe that in a crowd under the watchful eye of security cameras we are all protected. But Brian's disappearance shows just how quickly and completely someone can vanish, even in plain sight. It is a case that gnaws at people because it feels like it should be solvable. The building was finite, cameras plentiful, the number of witnesses many, and yet, after all these years, the answer is still missing. Locked away in the memory of someone who was there, buried in a place no one has ever thought to search, or lost forever to time. Until that answer comes, Brian Shaffer's fate will remain one of the most baffling mysteries in modern true crime. The story is not just about the night he disappeared, it's about the questions that linger in the silence that he left behind. Somewhere, somebody may know the truth. Until they speak, all that remains is a question that echoes through every retelling of his story. How can a person walk into a bar and never walk out? What do you think happened to Brian? Was he a victim of foul play, or a man who just wanted to get away from it all? Post your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching Echoes of the Unknown. If you found this case as fascinating as we did, give the video a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your theories. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our deep dives into the world's most puzzling mysteries. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and above all, keep listening for the echoes.